Next ball game, it is going to be Iowa taking on Kentucky. And that'll be a 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff on Saturday. Iowa's the 2.5-point favorite in the Music City Bowl. Total's 32. Now, the Hawkeyes averaged only 17 points a game this year, and they arguably had the worst offense in college football. They averaged fewer yards a game than any other team in college football except for one. They're also facing a Kentucky team who had a top 10 passing defense, so I don't think they're going to throw for many yards against them. Kentucky, they gave up just 173 yards a game through the air. Derek Jackson and Jordan Lovett, they have 120 tackles combined. Now, the Wildcats beat the likes of Louisville, Missouri, and Mississippi State this season. When it comes to the injury report, Lewis and Robinson are questionable for Kentucky. Meanwhile, for Iowa, horrible starting quarterback Spencer Petras is out. Laporta is questionable, so even more damage to that offense. Although, I don't know, I've got to imagine the backup will probably do better than Petras. He sucked this year. Now, weather-wise, possible showers on Saturday in Nashville. When it comes to the total, Kentucky went 11-1 to the under for the entire season. Meanwhile, Iowa went 70% to the under in their last 10. I'm going to lean toward Kentucky plus 2.5, under 32. And with that, we're going to jump into our next matchup. Alabama taking on Kansas State, 12 o'clock Sugar Bowl. Alabama's -7, totals 55.5. Now, the Tide failed to cover in 5 out of their last 7. Failures to cover against Austin Peay, Ole Miss, and LSU. They also have a plethora of guys who are staying healthy for the NFL, making a business decision. Now, they're facing a K-State team who actually upset TCU in the Big 12 championship. They also won their last 4 straight and averaged just about 40 points a game in those victories. Deuce Vaughn had over 1,400 rushing yards and 8 scores. When it comes to the number, K-State went 60% to the over in their last 10. Meanwhile, Bama saw overs against the likes of Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee. I'm going to lean toward Kansas State +7, over 55.5. Next matchup, TCU, Michigan, 4 o'clock Fiesta Bowl. Michigan's -7, totals 59. Now, the undefeated Wolverines covered in 6 out of their last 7. Covers against the likes of Purdue, Ohio State, and Penn State. They're also scoring over 40 points a game, and they rank in the top 10 in rushing. And even though top rusher Blake Corum's out for the year, it was actually Donovan Edwards who averaged more yards a carry. Don gained nearly 900 yards as the second running back, and he averaged 7.5 yards a carry. When it comes to defensive play, not many teams are better than Michigan. These guys allowed just 13 points per contest, and they're in the top 3 in fewest yards allowed. Now, they're facing a TCU team who failed to cover in 2 out of their last 3, and that includes an outright loss to K-State in the conference championship. This Horned Frogs D, they also finished 74th in the country in yards allowed per game. Now, injury-wise, Brown is out for TCU. Meanwhile, for Michigan, Corum's out for them. When it comes to the number, 4 out of Michigan's last 7 did get over the total. Meanwhile, Texas Christian saw overs against the likes of Iowa State, West Virginia, and Kansas State. I'm going to lean toward Michigan -7, over 59. Next matchup, the other playoff game. I'm talking about Ohio State taking on Georgia. 8 o'clock Peach Bowl on New Year's Eve. Georgia's -6, total 62. And even though everyone focuses on this Bulldog D, it's actually the Georgia offense who's in the top 10 in total yards per game. McIntosh and Edwards, they've combined for nearly 1,400 yards between the both of them. When it comes to defensive play, no one allows fewer yards on the ground than the Bulldogs. They have the #1 rush defense in college football. Dumas Johnson and Mondon, they have over 125 tackles combined. They're facing an Ohio State team who failed to cover in 4 out of their last 5. Failures to cover against the likes of Maryland, Northwestern, and Penn State. Now, this Buckeye defense also gave up 30 points or more in 3 out of those 5 ball games. Now, injury-wise, Henry, Henderson, Farquhar, and Smith and Jigba are out. Meanwhile, for Georgia, Gilbert, McConkey, and Green are questionable for them. When it comes to the total, Georgia went 60% to the over in their last 10. Meanwhile, Ohio State saw 9 out of their last 10 get over the line. Give me Georgia, -6, over 62. Next ball game, it is going to be Mississippi State taking on Illinois. 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff on Monday the 2nd. Illinois is -1.5 in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Totals 45 and a hook. And for those who don't know, the Illini actually allowed fewer points a game than any other defense in college football. They gave up just 12 points a game, which was an FBS best. They were also in the top 3 in fewest total yards allowed per game. Isaac Darkangelo and Sidney Brown, they had over 125 tackles combined. Brown was actually 3rd in the country in interceptions. They're facing a Mississippi State team who just lost Coach Mike Leach in a tragic death. And in addition to that, they had very little commitment to the run. The Bulldogs rushed for fewer yards per contest than every other team in college football except for one. Now, when it comes to this team, Mississippi State failed to cover in 4 out of their last 6. Failures against the likes of Georgia, Auburn, and Kentucky. When it comes to the total, Mississippi State did go 4-2 to the under in those 6 ball games I just mentioned. Meanwhile, Illinois went 70% to the under in their last 10. When it comes to the injury report, Chase Brown is sitting out for Illinois. The very good running back, not going to play. Lowry and McCray are questionable as well. And when it comes to the weather, hot and sunny in Tampa on Monday. I'm going to lean toward Illinois -1.5, under 45 and a hook. Next matchup, Tulane, USC, 1 o'clock Cotton Bowl. USC's the 2-point favorite, total 63. Now, this USC secondary may have their hands full with Tulane. They're 112th in the country in passing yards allowed. They also failed to cover against the likes of Utah, Cal, and Arizona. They're facing a Tulane squad who actually won the AAC, and they beat some good teams to get that done. They beat Cincinnati and UCF in back-to-back weeks for that championship run. They also scored a whole bunch of points down the home stretch. Running back Tyjae Spears rushed for nearly 1,400 yards and scored 15 times. Meanwhile, quarterback Michael Pratt, he ran it in for double-digit touchdowns himself. And when it comes to defensive play, the Green Wave had a top 20 secondary. Now, injury-wise for USC, Voorhees and Addison are out. Williams and Jackson are questionable. And when it comes to the total, the Trojans saw their last 7 straight get over the number. Meanwhile, Tulane went 6-1 to the over in their last 7. Give me Tulane +2, over 63. Next matchup, it is going to be LSU taking on Purdue, 1 o'clock Citrus Bowl. LSU's -14, totals 55.5. Now, the Tigers beat the likes of Arkansas, Alabama, and Florida this year. They also scored over 32 points a game, and they finished in the top 30 in total yards. When it comes to defensive play, Perkins and Ojulari finished with over a dozen sacks between the both of them. They're facing a Purdue squad who's going to work without star quarterback Aiden O'Connell. And even when Purdue had him in, they did very little to establish a run game. They're 101st in the nation in rush yards per contest, so that's going to be tough sledding with their backup. Now, O'Connell, Trice, Durham, and Jones are all sitting out for Purdue. Meanwhile, for LSU, Jenkins is out. Langlois, Banks, and Daniels are questionable. When it comes to the weather report, hot and sunny at kickoff in Orlando. Now, total-wise, LSU may put this one over the number themselves. They did go 6-1 to the over in their last 7. I'm going to lean toward LSU -15, over 55 and a hook. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup for the video. It is going to be Penn State, Utah, 5 o'clock Rose Bowl. Utah is the 3-point favorite, totals 52. Now, the Utes scored 40 points a game this year, and they finished in the top 10 in rushing. The Utes scored 37 times this year on the ground. When it comes to defensive play, this team was tough to move the sticks against. They finished in the top 20 in fewest yards allowed. Cole Bishop and R.J. Hubert, they combined for over 150 tackles. Now they're facing a Penn State team who allowed 85 total points in their 2 losses to Ohio State and Michigan. They also failed to cover against the likes of Northwestern and Central Michigan. Now, total-wise, 5 out of Penn State's last 7 got over the number. Utah saw overs against the likes of USC, Colorado, and UCLA. I'm going to lean toward Utah -3 over 52. And with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and jump into our quick pick recap. I like Georgia Southern -4.5 over 67. Utah State +8 over 60 and a hook. East Carolina -7 over 64. And if you're joining me here today on TikTok, please feel free to give me a thumbs up by smashing that heart button. You have no idea how much I'd appreciate that. And if you haven't done so already, please feel free to give me a follow. I'd love to connect with you on a daily basis. Give me Wisconsin -3.5 over 44 and a hook. UCF +4 over 62. Arkansas -3 over 68. North Carolina +15 over 75. Ole Miss -3 over 71. Syracuse +9.5 under 41 and a hook. Florida State -9 over 65. Washington Huskies +4 over 66. Maryland -2 under 46. Pitt Panthers +6 over 54. Notre Dame -3 under 52. Wyoming +2 under 43. Clemson -5.5 under 63 and a hook. Kentucky +2.5 under 32. Kansas State +7 over 55.5. Michigan -7 over 59. Georgia -6 over 62. Illinois -1.5 under 45 and a hook. Tulane +2 over 63. LSU -15 over 55.5. With my next and final free pick, I'm going to lean toward Utah -3 over 52. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on my website. Now, if you guys do end up getting a membership here today on patreon.com/BrockPage, you're going to get access to that membership for the next 30 days. As an added bonus here, guys, you're also going to get access to all of my cheaper memberships absolutely free. They're going to be included with your purchase. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. With that said, guys, happy bowl week to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage.